We're live now, and let's let people line up here a little bit. Okay, good. A lot of people are interested in this topic. I can see. Um, all right. Well, here we are. Happy Friday, everyone. It is my pleasure to be hosting Dr. Anita Kulkarni, who is coming to us live from the nation's capital. And I am here in upstate New York today, and we have a very interesting topic to discuss. Dr. Kulkarni has been working in DC for, I think, she'll tell us a little bit more about her career, but you've been there for at least 10, 15 years, and you've watched the progression of let's say, facial styles in our capital for women and men.
Yep.
And so just as prologue, I want to say I am working on a book that'll be published late next year on the very empowered, curiously empowered right-wing conservative women in America and how they their style, the how they got where they are, and kind of what challenges they faced, and then the trade-offs that they've made to get where they are. So with that as prologue, I just want to start off by saying the James Carville, the political strategist for Clinton and Democratic Raging Cajun, famously said that DC is Hollywood for ugly people. And well, these days they're not, it remains somewhat true, but everybody has seen what's going on down there. It's very recognizable. The Mar-a-Lago face, the exaggerated cheekbones, the marbleized skin, the goldfish lips, the Rapunzel hair extensions. There's a kind of a cartoonish video game avatar look that they seem to be going for. And Dr. Kulkarni is situated in a position to discuss why and how this is happening. So first, I just want to ask you, how long have you been in DC, and how long have you been seeing this phenomenon that we're more accustomed to seeing in places like Florida or Texas?
Yeah, so I have been a plastic surgeon in Washington, D.C. for 13 years. So I have seen 3 administrations come and go. And I've never seen anything like this. So DC tends to be a very conservative place in terms of plastic surgery, in terms of injectables, Botox filler. Everybody gets stuff done. Everybody does. But the idea in DC is that generally
Everybody, wait, let me back up. Men and women were doing it?
men and women. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that Joe Biden's had a couple of facelifts. If anytime you see him photographed from the side, you can see his scars on the side. Everybody gets stuff done, but the aesthetic in DC has always been understated, quiet. You want to look like the best version of yourself, but you don't necessarily want people to know that you've had work done. And even in the first administration, the first Trump administration, we didn't really see this exaggerated, cartoonish face. And I think that's because there were more establishment Republicans in the mix. There were more Washington people that stayed through that administration. And this second time around, those people seem to be mostly gone. And we've had this influx of these very hardcore Trump women who tend to favor this exaggerated aesthetic. And plastic surgery has always been regional. Even to this day, I do a lot of breast implants, for example. And the average size of breast implant that I put in my practice is something in the 200s, 255, 275. If you go to Dallas, Texas, the average size of implant that they're putting in across the city is 350, 400.
Wait, let me stop you there because you're talking medical talk. What are those numbers mean? Is that
so like
the
Yeah, so
size?
it's the size, it's the volume of the breast implant that's going in. So a 255 cc implant on somebody who's starting out with not a lot of breast tissue would make you about a B cup. And a 350 cc implant would probably make that same person a D cup. So the aesthetics are very different regionally and they always have been. So, in Dallas, like I was saying, their average implant size is 350, which means that women are going a
Ba
little
ba
bit more,
boom.
or yeah, more like a D cup than a B cup. But the B cup aesthetic has always been DC. That is just how we like things around here. And that's my aesthetic. And so it's something that has always worked for my practice. So this new administration comes in, and for the first time in the more than a dozen years I've been in practice in DC, this is the first time I've seen this type of request that I have had to say no to. And that is how this whole topic started that you and I are talking about, is that women would come in, some of these women would come in and they would be asking for more when they already have product in their face. And at some point, it's an aesthetic issue. And at another point, it's a safety issue. There's a point at which you can't put anything else into your face. And so that's the real difference that we've seen this time, is that the women that are in this extreme side of this administration aesthetic, they want you to know that they've had stuff done. They want it to look like they've had stuff done. And that is just, it's such a departure from our normal aesthetic in DC and the type of patient that I normally see.
When you say no, well, first of all, are these people that we would recognize that you're talking about that you've turned down? I mean, I don't
I
want
mean,
you to give.
I could never tell you that.
Okay. All right. So I don't want to go there. I don't want to get you in trouble. But are they, when you say no to them, do they just go to someone else? I mean, do they assume that you're going to do this because they could go to Florida and get somebody to do it? And what happens when you say no? And how do you explain to them why you won't do it?
So if I'm saying no for an aesthetic reason, and I'm not here to judge anybody's aesthetics. If beauty is very much eye of beholder. That if you think it looks good and I can do it for you safely and in a way that is in line with what I believe also, then I'm going to do it. But if I'm saying no from an aesthetic perspective, I'll say, if I do this for you, you're going to go from looking normal to looking abnormal. There's going to be something anatomically abnormal about the way your face looks. And if I'm saying no from a safety perspective, I'll say, you already have 2 syringes of filler in your lips. If I try to put more filler in your lips, you are going to be at high risk for skin death. You are going to be at, risk for having that skin
Skin
nearby.
death. And can you explain what that is? We talked about it a little last week, but just so that our listeners can understand how horrible this is. What is skin death?
So when you put filler in, you put it in with a needle or a cannula, which means that you're putting a gel. The filler is a gel consistency. You're putting a gel into the face to add volume. So when you have volume loss as you age, everything tends to go down. And if you add a little volume to the cheek, then you can lift it a bit, you can revolumize it. Your face is full of blood vessels. If that gel gets into one of the blood vessels in the face, it'll block the blood flow to the skin, which can make the skin die. And then you'll have, really quite bad things can happen. If your skin experiences blood loss, then you'll get a wound, you'll get a scab, that part of the skin won't survive. You'll end up with a really bad scar. And the more filler you put in, the more likely you are to have a vascular occlusion, which is what that's called, a vascular complication.
Um, you mentioned the the phrase anatomical normalcy and
Yeah.
filler blindness, and that's actually what originally inspired me to reach out to you because you had said that to a reporter. Talk to us a little bit about filler blindness because I mean, um, as a potential consumer of this stuff, which I'm not yet. It scares me because when I'm in, let's say, New York, where a lot of people, women are doing it, I can see somebody 50 feet away in a Starbucks or something, and you can see it. And I always think, oh God, I feel so sorry for her. She's got so much, like her lips look so weird to me, but there's something going on here where they're not seeing that, and they probably are looking at me and going, oh my God, you look like a hag, right? So,
Right.
so what's happening to you? Say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
But what's happening to people who've altered themselves away from anatomical normalcy. And what
Well,
is that?
I think it's human nature that whatever you see around you becomes your normal, right? So when you're in an environment where you're seeing a lot of overfilled faces, it starts to look less abnormal to you because it's what you're seeing. And, this became really prevalent when filler first came out. And this was way back in the first seasons of The Real Housewives, the Real Housewives TV show.
Hmm.
And when filler first came out and people started putting it in, there wasn't so much an art to it. People were just putting as much as they could possibly put in. And so you saw this transition from where women looked like normal human women. And then they started to get these really puffy faces. And, so it was called pillow face back then, or they would get these big fake looking lips. But then you watch the show and everybody on the show has the same look. And so they're all in that environment looking at each other and everybody looks pretty similar. And so you start to think of that as your normal. That's the first thing that happens. And then the second thing that happens is that the first time you get lip filler, for example, almost everyone, the first time you get it, you put it in, it swells a bit, and you look in the mirror and you think, oh my gosh, this is really dramatic. And then the swelling goes down and you get used to it. And then you come in again a year later to have it refilled because the product dissolves over time. And you got used to your lips being a little bit bigger. And so you think, well, I could go just a little bit bigger. And then I could go just a little bit bigger. So this combination of getting used to your own face looking the way that it does, and then seeing all the people around you also looking that way, you combine those two things and you lose total sight of what normal face looks like. And you think that becomes your new normal. And I think we've seen a lot of that in this particular extreme aesthetic.
You have downloaded some photographs
Yeah.
on your laptop. We are going to have a look at them. I'd like to have you just walk us through what actually is going on to make the face. Let's start with like a Lauren Sanchez. It's such an extreme difference, or a Laura Loomer. What is going on? What has been done there? How much time and money, probably I would ask if you can answer that, goes into making yourself go from what you were to what you are now, if you're Lauren Sanchez or Kimberly Guilfoyle.
Yeah, so this is just a little collection of photos, before and after photos of some of the Mar-a-Lago face kind of before and afters. And this one over here is just an example of four that have had it done that are all post Mar-a-Lago face. And what you're going to notice in each of them is pretty much the same thing, which is that you take a face that started with normal, natural, rounded contours and you angularize it. So you make these very, very sharp angles. And so the
How
first
do
thing
you
they
do that?
do,
Is that a knife or is that a filler?
that's a filler typically. I mean, these women could have had any combination of surgery and filler, but a lot of times the jawline work is done with filler. So you're adding filler to the corner, you're adding filler to the chin, and you're creating these really sharp lines. And then the same thing with the lips. You start out with lips that look relatively normal or even lips that are on the small side, and then you add more and more and more filler until they become kind of cartoonishly full. And then the third thing that's really common is overdone cheek filler. So if you look, the interesting thing I think that happens with overdone cheek filler is that the smile changes and it goes into like a Joker type smile. So this is a really good example up top where she
Hmm.
started out with a smile that curves up like a normal human smile, but when you put so much filler in the cheek that it pushes down on the cheek, now the smile goes straight across and it has this little bit of an abnormal contour to it that
Hmm.
looks like the Joker. And I think that you see again and again and again. And I would guess, if you for you to have to go from this to this, that's probably 10 or more syringes of filler if it's just
Wow.
filler. And that's, at 800 to 1,000 or $1,200 a syringe, it's about maybe $10,000 worth of product. If you're
Mhm.
talking about surgery, if you're talking about somebody who's actually going under the knife and getting a facelift or, exaggerated eye surgery, that's going to run you 75, 100, $150,000.
Um, a questions has come up. This is something I've wondered about too. What happens when they get older and can't do any more fillers? What is the sort of
Yeah, I mean,
process? What's the process of it? Does it degrade over time? Like
it
what's going on with
it
inside the face?
It does degrade over time. Most of the product has a 12 to 18-month shelf life. Some of it has an 18 to 24-month shelf life. Most of the fillers are made out of high hyaluronic acid, which is a sugar molecule that's naturally made by your body, but the product that we use artificially is made in a lab. And then it degrades over time. So in the filler really works best for people who are probably between like 30 and 50, maybe a little older, and it's where you're trying to make subtle changes in a way to stave off a facelift. And when it's done well, you really shouldn't be able to see it from 50 feet across a room. You know, it should be pretty well hidden. Um, and then over time, as gravity continues to work and the skin stretches out and you don't have as much elasticity, well, then filler is not going to work as well and it's going to look more and more abnormal. And then you're thinking about surgery. You're thinking about a facelift.
Once you get older, that stuff stops working and you start to need a knife and a tuck or whatever it's called,
Yeah.
a nip and a tuck.
Yeah.
Um, but these faces are mostly filler. The
I
lips
would
get
guess
that
so.
way through filler, through the
Yes.
hyaluronic acid. All
That's
right.
right.
Um, so what we see, we've covered the cost and we've covered the chemical makeup of this stuff. And I mean, I guess besides the skin depth, what are some of the other kind of things that can go wrong when you're
Well,
undergoing
a big one
when you're overdoing it?
A big one when you're doing this, when you're putting too much product in a face, another big one is filler migration. So initially you put the filler in a certain place in your face and you typically do it, like I said, to volumize that area. So as you get older, the central part of your face starts to drop. You might add a little cheek filler to bring that volume back up. But if you're trying to put so much filler in, it can start to move in your face. So instead of being in that position it was in before, it can start to sort of shift inside your face. And then it's not going to be where you wanted it to be to begin with. And then what are you doing? You can dissolve the filler, you can add more to a different area, you can think about surgery. Um, so filler migration and vascular occlusion are probably the two biggest complications.
Have you ever seen the movie Brazil? Did we talk about this?
No.
I don't know. Some of the listeners may have heard of it. There's a scene where, well, it's a future, it's sort of science fictiony, but these older, really, really old women are getting their faces redone, and it sort of does not end well for a lot of them. But I won't give it away. All right, so we've got the medical and sort of science out of the way a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the sociology of this thing. I mean, you're working with women, you're obviously pro woman, you're working with women, you care about their, our feelings and situation in this time in history, our status, such as it is. I guess when you look at this phenomenon as a plastic surgeon, as somebody who works in it, what do you think is going on with them socially? I mean, do they talk to you? Do they come in and go, "Oh my God, Dr. Kulkarni, I look so old," or "I'm losing my ability to stand in front of a TV camera and give, the foreign policy speech that I was going to give"? Like, what is going on with them? Why is this happening?
This particular phenomenon, I think, has a lot to do with groupthink. But what you said is absolutely correct. A lot of what we see, we're kind of a politics and media town. That's
Yeah.
what DC is. And in politics and in media, there is a pretty heavy presence of appearance. I mean, it is important to maintain appearance. Youth is valued, but not hyper youth, right? Like if you want to have some gravity in a foreign policy speech, or if you're in politics, or if you're going to be on TV, you don't want to look super young and you don't want to look extreme. If you're in the mainstream, you want to look like the best version of yourself. You don't want to have, women who are on TV do not want to have jowls that you can see on TV. They don't want to have a saggy neck. They don't want to have, but most of the people, most of the politics and media people that are looking to come in for stuff from me or from my colleagues aren't looking for this particular aesthetic. They're really looking to be the best version of themselves, and they
Mhm.
don't want to look 20, because that doesn't help you when you're trying to bring gravity to a topic.
Yeah, so most of your clients are not walking in and asking for the Mar-a-Lago look, and they don't
Or
use those
nobody,
words. I'm
no,
assuming they don't use that word.
no, no, definitely not. And
They don't say I'm a Republican. I work in the White House, and
no,
I have to look like Lauren Sanchez. Can you do that to me
no,
overnight?
nobody does. Nobody comes in asking for that.
Oh my goodness. Um, so last week when we were chatting, we talked a little bit about the sort of the times that we live in, the MAGA times, and what MAGA one of its goals or aspects is that we see them idolizing the 1950s and the kind of Betty Crocker, wife at home in a skirt in a dress, um, with the wasp waist and the pointy bra and so on from the 50s. Um, when you look at these sort of mega the this look, would you say that this is it is a phenomenon of Washington, or do you think that it's something larger that's going on in this country, that that women in general are sort of going back towards that? I mean, as an observer of the changing facial style.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope it's not women in general, but there is an emphasis in this phenomenon that we're talking about. There's an emphasis on hyperfemininity,
Mhm.
and I think you see it on both sides. My practice is for women by women, so I don't have many male patients, but I think you see it on both sides. I think on the female side with this aesthetic, the hyperfemininity is like the big hair and the big lashes and the big cheeks and the big lips. And it takes all of these feminine features and takes them to an extreme. And on the masculine side, you're seeing a lot more very square jawlines. And some of that is what people are born with, and some of it can be achieved with surgery and with filler. So I think there's been this movement towards extreme masculinity and extreme femininity. And I can actually I'm going to share my screen with you again. So I'm going to show you. Okay, so these are the ones that I had pulled earlier. So if you look at Kristi Noem, she's a really good example of what this of this phenomenon. And if you look at her before, this, to my eye, looks like what a regular Washington politician woman would look like. Um, and then this is what she looks like today. So this is 2019 and 2025. And you can see exactly where the features have changed. And this being an example of that hyperfemininity, you have the big hair, the false eyelashes, dark brows, big overfilled lips, big overfilled face. And you've taken somebody who looks like a professional woman and turned her into somebody that looks a little bit more cartoonish, a little bit more Barbie doll aesthetic, a little
Mhm.
more hyper, extreme feminist. And then if you look at Kimberly Guilfoyle, same thing. This is an attractive woman. This is a woman who looks
Mhm.
like she might be an actress. She's got, this is what I was talking about before with the smile. You've got a smile that has a natural shape to it. Now, when you overfill the cheek, you've pushed the corners of the mouth down and you get this straight across Joker style face or Joker style smile. And that's a combination of overdone lip filler and overdone cheek filler. Um, and then just one more example here, same thing. And actually, you can see the
Mhm.
Joker smile in this one as well. So this is someone who used to have kind of a natural, pretty smile, curves upwards,
That's
like a
Lara Trump, by the way. I don't
yeah,
know how many
large
people have
one. Yep.
used her yet.
And then now she has filler here, filler here, filler here, filler in the lip, filler in the cheek, and it's pushing down on the nasolabial fold, which is this crease here, and creating that straight across Joker mouth. And it's the same mouth. So if you look at that mouth after and you look at that mouth after, well, they sure looked different before, but they sure look the same now. And all of these women afterwards have that hyper feminine, big hair, big lashes, thick brows, So I think that that's an interesting commentary on how the aesthetic represents the social status.
Um, yeah. Okay. So, um, curious because you won't do it.
No, well,
I mean, and to my eye, that is it. Looking at say Kristi Noem, I just feel so. I mean, I don't particularly like what she's doing, and obviously, allying herself with things that I don't agree with at all. But I feel kind of sorry for her when I look at her because I think, why would you do that to yourself? And I wonder if you have any thoughts about when they go and ask for people, there are people who will do that for them, obviously, who will not
More
warn
more
them.
people more people that will than won't, and I think that's for 2 reasons. One is there is a little bit of a perverse incentive as a provider because when somebody's coming in asking you for 10 syringes of filler, that's $10,000, so there's a financial incentive to do whatever the patient wants, and unfortunately, in our industry, there's a lot of people that will do whatever you want if you just give them enough money. So there's that incentive. And then there's the fact that if you're a provider and you live in an area that this is popular, like if you are a Palm Beach plastic surgeon or you are like a, South Florida plastic surgeon or a dermatologist, you probably have a little bit of filler blindness yourself. You've probably been
Yeah.
doing this to people for so long and so many people are coming in telling you they like it. And then you also get that, that filler blindness and you keep doing it because you think it looks good too. So I think there's that element of it.
So even the providers are losing their sense of anatomical normalcy.
I mean, you can. I said this in a different interview, but you can tell a lot about a plastic surgeon or dermatologist by looking at their staff. When you walk into an office and you look at the person who sits at the front desk and the nurses in the office and the person that's showing you to the room, if all those people look like Christy Nome and you don't want to look like Christy Nome, like run, like don't go to that office, right?
Oh my goodness. All right. Christy Nome, let's say Christy Nome and Sanchez. What if they wake up one day and they decide, oh my God, I really want to look like I did.
Yeah. So it's
What
interesting.
can you
So
undo it? Can you
you
go backwards?
You can. There's most of the products that people use in the face for filler are this HA or hyaluronic acid, and there's an enzyme that dissolves it. So if you did decide that you wanted to dissolve your filler, you could, and then you inject it just like you inject filler. It's a liquid, and it'll dissolve the HA. Now, most of the time, if you're using a normal amount of filler in a face and you dissolve it, you'll go back to looking like you did before. You'll just, it'll all spring back. Over time, if you have stretched that skin out so much with so much product and you've got it, blown up the way that some of these faces are, your skin's going to sag. I mean, when you take that filler out, you're going to see that droop again. And it's going to look particularly dramatic to you because you started out looking like you were blown up like a balloon and then you're going to look like a deflated balloon. So I would guess that the time that most people are dissolving their filler is when they're prepping for a facelift. So if you're deciding that you're going to go to surgery, then you're going to want to get all that stuff out and start from a clean slate.
Oh, so you have to do that before you get surgery.
You don't have to if
You
you
have
have a
to let
normal.
it drain out.
Well, if you have a normal amount of filler, you probably don't because most people aren't blown up like balloons. But yeah, if your face is blown up like a balloon, you're going to have to take it out.
All right. Again, like thinking globally here, this is not particularly an isolated phenomenon with the Mar-a-Lago people. I mean, it is called the Mar-a-Lago face, but the Instagram face preceded it, and social media, the sort of the normalizing of this has been going on for a while with women. Talk to me a little bit about that. The media effect on what women are wanting and how the desire for a type of face is changed by filters, not
Yeah.
just
Oh,
filler.
100%. So the people have always been influenced by media. Beauty standards have always been influenced by media. We talked briefly about in the 90s, there was this like anorexic chic where everyone wanted to be super, super skinny. And that was all influenced by what was on the runways and what was in magazines. What changed with the advent of social media is all of that influential aesthetic went from being on your screen that you see every once in a while and on a magazine rack in the grocery store to being in your pocket and you were looking at it all the time. And so when Instagram first came out, I think the generation that was most harmed by it was the generation that wasn't talking about the fact that most of these faces were filtered. So the filters on Instagram or anywhere on social media are really aggressive. I mean, you could be looking at somebody's Instagram profile and then meet them in person and have no idea it's the same person because the Instagram filters have so much change your face so much.
Hmm.
So now you've got it in your pocket and you've got it on social media, and then you start seeing everyone starts to look the same. So this kind of Kardashian-esque facial aesthetic got really popular in like the mid 2000s, and all of a sudden everyone's coming in asking for these like filtered versions of themselves. And I was, 7 or 8 years ago, I was giving interviews about how people were coming in with the filtered version of their own face and asking for that. And that was equally unrealistic because I can't, it's aesthetics. It's not magic. Like there's nothing that I can do with my hands that's going to give you what that Instagram filter is going to do, that's in your phone. So,
did they bring their picture in and say, I want to
oh
look
yeah,
like this, not like
there
this?
yeah, absolutely. There was a period of time.
Hmm.
There's articles on it like 8 years ago where people, especially the younger generation that was utilizing social media in their women that were in their like mid 20s would come in with these filtered faces, their own faces, but filtered and say, like, make me look like this. And it's just, you can't do that. It's not magic. So I do think it created this more uniform aesthetic where plastic surgery has always been regional, but now everybody's looking at the same thing on Instagram and they're all looking at the same filters and they're all looking at the same Instagram influencers. And so we got a lot more homogenous requests. More people wanted to look like that same face. And I don't think that was great for any of us either. So,
Um, all right. We live in a time that we think we've progressed in certain ways, but really this fixation with how women look in politics, even if you're not an elected, if you're a Michelle Obama and not the Barack Obama, you're still being judged. You're still being held to certain standards. Um, so, how different really is this sort of kind of caricaturization or fixation on creating women into sort of video game avatars? Does it return to normal ever in your imagination?
I mean, I hope. I don't have a crystal ball, but my best hope is that this particular extreme aesthetic is a blip. It's a moment in time. Because women have always been judged by their appearance. We talked about how Hillary Clinton was, told not to wear pants. She was told to wear more skirts, and Michelle Obama was told to soften her aesthetic. And so women have always been judged and always been asked to present some version of femininity. But I hope that this extreme version is not here to stay because it's really, to my eye, as a person who appreciates beauty and works in beauty, it's so unnatural. And I really hope other people can see that too.
Yeah, we can see it. Or people who are watching this obviously are not in the mega cult, I guess, or crowd. But uh, I think there is this other element that we're talking about, which is the social media ization of younger women, especially who are been on the phone since they were 5, and the way that women look to them and the way that what's normal on the screen is impossible to reach in real life. But maybe not, and they will try and try and try
Yeah.
with professionals. Um, well, we have reached our half hour mark here. I appreciate this so much.
Yep. Of course.
Really, really interesting, and maybe we'll have you on again later as time goes on.
Well,
And
hopefully it'll change. Hopefully you'll be talking to me about how everything has returned to normal.
I wonder, yeah, but I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. Thank you so much, Dr. Kulkarni, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank
And
you. My
everybody,
pleasure.
see you later next week. Bye.